Hi, my name is Rachel Rounds. I am the Business Connections Program Manager at VCU's Rehab Research and Training Center. And today we're going to chat about some key laws that employers should know about with relation to discrimination against individuals with disabilities in the workplace. As I get clicking through here, I just want to mention that I got my information for this presentation from the U.S. Department of Labor's website. The Office of Disability Employment Policy has done a really nice job of taking all these laws that are super long and kind of teasing out the information that relates directly to employers. And it's a nice outline of the different laws that there are that are related to employment and individuals with disabilities. And at the end of this, they had a nice checklist of, you know, if you are this kind of business, then this is the law that's going to apply to you. So we are going to go over that a little bit at the end of this presentation. And I'm also going to post the website because I encourage you to go to that website if you have additional questions, because there are a lot of links and other resources on that website that could answer any additional questions. So let's get started with talking about the 5 laws, the federal laws that protect individuals with disabilities from discrimination in the workplace. Most of us have probably heard about the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then there is also the Rehabilitation Act, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, the Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act, and Civil Service Reform Act. And so we're going to go through just some quick highlights about each of these laws and the titles and sections of the laws that apply to you as the employer. So the Americans with Disabilities Act actually prohibits discrimination of individuals with disabilities across all facets of life, across employment and transportation and school and public and private areas that are open to the general public. So it's kind of an all-encompassing law that seeks to prevent discrimination of individuals with disabilities. And there are 2 sections of the ADA that relate directly to employment. And you'll notice throughout this whole presentation that the underlying theme here is that employers cannot discriminate against qualified individuals with disabilities. So Title I prohibits employers from discriminating against qualified individuals with disabilities. Individuals with disabilities must be treated fairly in all employment-related activities such as interviewing, pay, benefits, and promotions. And a quick example of that is if you've got somebody with a disability and somebody without a disability who are doing the same job, those individuals should be making the same amount of money. If both are qualified for the position and both are doing similar work, then they should be getting comparable paychecks. And then Title II protects individuals with disabilities from discrimination in state and local government service programs and activities. It prevents all state and local government entities from discriminating against qualified individuals with disabilities. And then moving on to the Rehabilitation Act, this authorized funding for various disability-related purposes, such as state voc rehab programs and independent living programs. And an example of a state voc rehab program in Virginia, we've got the Department for Aging and Rehabilitative Services. They fund businesses like VCU and other vendors to look for employment for individuals with disabilities, and we can train individuals with disabilities on their jobs. They'll also fund educational programs. They'll fund adjustments to vehicles if that's necessary, modifications to vehicles. And so there's a lot of services that are available to individuals with disabilities, and that is thanks to the Rehabilitation Act. And so there's 3 sections of the Rehabilitation Act that are directly related to discrimination against individuals with disabilities by specific types of employers. And those types of employers are federal agencies, employers who contract with federal agencies, and programs receiving federal financial assistance. And so those three types of employers are broken down into these different sections. And Section 501 prohibits federal employers from discriminating against qualified individuals with disabilities and requires them to take affirmative action to employ and advance qualified individuals with disabilities. Section 503 prohibits employment discrimination based on disability and requires affirmative action in the hiring, placement, and advancement of people with disabilities by federal contractors or subcontractors who have federal contracts or subcontracts in excess of $10,000. And then Section 504 prohibits discrimination against qualified individuals with disabilities by federal agencies or by programs or activities that receive federal financial assistance or are conducted by a federal agency. Then we move into the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and this consolidated federal job training and employment programs such as employment and training services for adults, dislocated workers, youth, and adult education literacy and vocational rehab programs. WIOA's Section 188 prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities who apply for, participate in, or are employees of any programs or organization that receives federal financial assistance under WIOA. Then there is the Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act. This one's probably not quite as known as the first three that we discussed. So this requires employers that have federal contracts or subcontracts entered into before December 1st, 2003 of $25,000 or more, and or federal contracts or subcontracts entered into on or after December 1st, 2003 of $100,000 or more to provide equal employment opportunities for certain veterans with disabilities. And the Section 4212 specifically prohibits discrimination against covered veterans with disabilities in the full range of employment activities. And then there is the Civil Service Reform Act, and this covers most federal agencies, contains several rules designed to promote fairness in federal personnel actions, and prohibits discrimination against applicants and employees with disabilities. So again, you see basically the underlying theme of all of the laws is prohibiting discrimination against individuals with disabilities in the world of employment. So on the website I was mentioning, they had this, if you are this type of employer, then this is the law that applies to you. So I'm going to quickly go through these. We've already gone through the different acts and titles and sections that, that would apply. So I'm going to read through these, but I would encourage you to go to the website if you have additional questions. So, and the way they split this up is with private companies, government entities, state government entities, and then federal government entities. So if you're an employer who's a private company who employs 15 or more people, then you have to comply with Title I of the ADA and its implementing regulations. If the employer is a private company that contracts or subcontracts with the federal government in excess of $10,000, the employer must comply with Section 503 of the Rehabilitation Act and its implementing regulations. If the employer is a private company that has contracts or subcontracts entered into before December 1st, 2003 of $25,000 or more, and or contracts entered into on or after December 1st, 2003 of $100,000 or more with the federal government, the employer must comply with Section 4212 of Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act and its implementing regulations. If the employer is a private company that receives federal financial assistance, the agency must comply with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and its implementing regulations. If the employer is a private company that receives federal financial assistance under WIOA or partners with or is part of a WIOA finance program with a one-step career center, the employer must comply with Section 188 of WIOA and its implementing regulations. So now we move into if it's a state or local government entity, and we're going to go through all of those same types of employers, but on the state and local government agency level. So if the employer is a state or local government agency or entity that employs 1 to 14 people, the agency or entity must comply with Title II of the ADA and its implementing regulations. If the employer is a state or local government agency or entity that employs 15 or more people, the agency or entity must comply with Title I and Title II of the ADA and their implementing regulations. If the employer is a state or local government agency or entity that receives federal financial assistance, the agency or entity must comply with Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act and the agency's regulations implementing Section 504. If the employer is a state or local government agency or entity that receives federal financial assistance under WIOA or partners with or is part of a WIOA finance program with a one-stop career center, the entity or agency must comply with Section 188 of the WIOA and its implementing regulations. And then we move on to if the employer is a federal government agency or entity that is not otherwise excluded from coverage of Section 501 of the Rehabilitation Act by law or order of the President, the agency or entity must comply with Section 501 of the Rehabilitation Act and their implementing regulations. So as I mentioned, I was going to post the website where I got all of the information for this presentation. I would encourage you to go there. There's a lot of extra information on that website that would be good if you have additional questions, and I appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation, and I hope it was useful. Have a good one.